So I knew this video was going to do good because it's about the identity of the night. That was kind of inevitable, but wow, this is kind of insane. It's only been like 3 days. First 2 days, actually. 13 hours, and it's amassed over 11,000 views, and I've made $42 from this alone. I don't know why it's like considered a sin to show your analytics, but I don't think there's anything wrong with showing my analytics. So yeah, there it is. But that's not the point. The point is that I rarely have a chance to do a reading your comments video because I always read my comments. I just read them as they come in, because unless for some reason they get filtered out by spam, which happens a lot for some reason. They don't even get filtered out. They just don't appear in my notifications for some reason. But there's never enough comments to warrant this. Like last time I could have made a reading your comments video would have been during the beam attack, which what is there to read there? It's beam attack. There's nothing of interest to read, so I didn't do it. But now we can read this. I'm expecting a lot of disagreement. Hopefully it will be reasonable disagreement, because you don't just get, oh my gosh, 500? Last time I checked it was 200. 543 comments. Okay, I'm not even sure if I'm going to get through all these. Yeah, you're welcome. Obviously, this should go without saying, but don't harass anyone, even if they're a douche. Even if they're a jerk about it. But I don't think I'm going to bother editing out names and I mean, it's all on the comments of one video, so it's not like you could stop anyone from going anyway. What about the vessel? I don't know. The vessel doesn't have anything to do with Des, as far as I'm aware, unless it's the Dessel. There's definitely been some cool and interesting theories about the vessel and about the idea that the Knight could be a kind of vessel, but I don't see any reason why it would be the one from the Gunner Maker sequence. So, I don't know. Pretty sure that means that the question in the email isn't Des-related. That could definitely be what it means, since it's obviously in referral to Noel. But at the same time, the character in the code ends their speech with "thank you" the same way, which is probably Des, so it could still be Des-related. At very least, Des and Noel, or Noel and whoever is in the code, have gone through the same sequence. Whatever entity is in control or instigating the weird route, it got to whoever's in the code as well. Let's see. I'm gonna just go to the timestamps on my phone, because if I look at the comments on the video itself, it'll filter out stuff, which is gonna be annoying, so. It takes too much headcanon to be true. Sure, you have some similarities when it's time to get down to business. No one can agree on how Des is in the Night. It's always some made-up plot point about being corrupted, being a zombie, soul split, etc. All of which are not founded in any evidence of the game. If your Night theory can't exist with what evidence we have so far, it's most likely not true. I mean, that part's not true because there's still Chapter 5 and onward. We don't know when the Knight's identity is going to come to light. And I don't think, since Toby went through the trouble to not say who the Knight is, I assume we're not supposed to know yet. Again, unless it's a Mr. L type deal, but it doesn't feel like it, because of the think about the Knight scene. I don't think if Toby's going to go through the effort to make it a mystery, I don't think he would necessarily want you to be able to figure it out within the first three, or I guess halfway through. Like, definitely it should be possible to figure out, but it shouldn't be spelled out to the point where, like, you can, without a doubt, figure out who the Knight is within the first half of the game. Unless, of course, Chapter 5 is immediately going to confirm who the Knight is, which is entirely possible. With the rate at things are escalating in Deltarune, that is entirely possible. Referring to the phrase, when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail, and it's meant to differ us from seeing it as a clue. Never heard that phrase, but yeah, that makes sense. Sure. It's Rudy, obviously. I have a particular issue with it would be bad writing with Rudy, because it would be completely possible to write that in a way that's not just consistent with Deltarune's theme, but actively supports them. There's a lot of stuff about escapism, toxic nostalgia, and trauma. You could easily tell a story with a sickly dying man being kept alive at the cost of becoming a rapid apocalypse demon. Rabid. Maybe Rudy is being kept alive against his will without his knowledge, because one or more of his loved ones are willing to accept the consequences of a potential roaring if it means he won't succumb to his illness. Maybe his illness is because he's willing to be taken on the role of the Knight, or whatever intended purpose he has, with the cost of power in the dark world being sickness in the light world. That, maybe? But no one else is, sure. And that's just one character. You can come up with stuff like that for just about any knight candidate if you're creative enough. So there's so many potential motivations and alibis in the game. And the game clearly encourages you to think about it. Even if it ends up being Des, I think it's really lame to just write off anything but the correct answer when Toby seems to explicitly want us to question it exactly. I also take issue with, bro, the knight is aura farming in Chapter 4, so it can't be anyone else. As if crossing your arms in annoyance or impatient is some kind of shonen anime stock pose and not something most human beings instinctively do without realizing it. Absolutely true. Especially, I saw some other weird comments about Rudy Knight not being possible because Toby wouldn't, since Toby has a disability in his hand, Toby wouldn't want to make the disabled old man a villain. Are you dumb? Toby Fox is already obviously Gaster, and Gaster, while he may not be outwardly evil, Gaster is obviously malicious in some degree. Toby has written himself as the villain, and even if Gaster isn't evil, he is drenched in Satan iconography. And Gaster is clearly Toby's, like, serious self-insert, whereas the dog... In fact, Toby even said in the stream that the only reason the annoying dog exists is because Temmie. So it wasn't even Toby's idea to put himself as a white dog. So I don't understand any of the arguments like because again, and not man, I should try to keep track of my thought better. Not only is that dumb because Toby is absolutely willing to make himself the villain. I mean, he's the one who created the weird route. He's the one who, like, unless we do find out there is a specific character behind the weird route, that is entirely his doing, and every tiny little dialogue that pushes you to do the weird route is Toby himself speaking it. So, obviously he's not above being the villain, and that's assuming that the knight is actually, like, outwardly evil. Like, yes, the knight kills Jackenstein, but that's it. Outside of that, everything the knight does can be questioned. And I don't think... But that just means that the knight doesn't view the Darkners as people, at least. But, again, Rudy is literally threatening to beat people up all the time for the littlest reasons. So, that's not really something that makes it out of the question either. I think Death Knight is only compelling if Death is human, and I find Rudy to be the most compelling option because of how much of a narrative blank it gives Toby to work with. Yeah, that's possible. I mean, Death Knight can definitely work without being a human, but... We can even bring back chess theory because there are 4 knights on the board. Just because Papyrus isn't the Roaring Knight doesn't mean he isn't a Roaring Knight. There were 2 Roaring... No. I do think that chess theory is still on the table because of the Jackenstein room. It's just a little different than we imagined it, but I think the idea of 4 knights has become... Like, yeah, I was a big 4 knights enthusiast before Chapter 3 came out, but, like, it's the Roaring Knight. And outside of Sham saying the Strange Knight appeared, there's been very little to suggest there are multiple Roaring Knights, and the Titan in the prophecy it's a Titan. Obviously, the Knight looks similar to the Titan because whatever the Knight has gone through is some sort of metamorphosis of darkness, which is obviously going to look kind of like a Titan, because they are the embodiment of darkness. I think this might be the Knight, but I know it could be anyone. To be clear, I'm hoping to be a good story, not to be right. Yeah, exactly. It's going to be compelling, no matter what. First 5, I knew this was going to be fire already. Personally, I'm very much on the Rudy Knight train, especially because of how his reaction to Susie changes if you don't introduce her to him before you do the night fight. I didn't know that. Not to mention, I think his illness is caused by using the black shard in his golds to find Des, which makes sense for him to work alongside Carol, Asgore, and Chris. Yeah. I did not know that there's different dialogue. Well, it's probably not specifically related to the night fight. It's related to if you didn't introduce her in Chapter 2. But I didn't know there was different... Oh, of course there'd be different dialogue. But I haven't seen it, so that's something I'm going to need to look for. What if the Knight is the Knight crazy? I think the Rudy Knight is more deeper than what you described. Well, yeah. I was just listening off candidates. Spooky Gumball Room. I'm not seeing what you're seeing in this. The bottom center region kind of looks like a Space Invader. That's very much... Seems to be like people seeing what they want to see, also mirroring the image and the pattern exclusively appearing on that mirrored access. Largely discredits the info. But maybe the gumball machine and the path below it forming a smiley face is meant to be a teensy hint for delusional people searching for clues. If that's actually the edge of the image, and you've just duplicated, then it seems it's a bit... yeah. I definitely overestimated how big of evidence that was, based on a random Reddit post I found. But it literally is the only thing that actually connects Des, exclusively Des as a person, to the night. Because everything else that is Des Night evidence is related to things that Des likes, things that look like Des, and anyone whose goal is to find Des would drench themselves, maybe not even consciously, it could be subconsciously, with whatever transformation they've gone through, they'd appear with Des stuff. If they are someone mourning Des, they would use the bat because that's their keepsake, etc. So I latched onto that evidence because that is a room explicitly related to the number, the day of December, and it looked like the night. But yeah, that definitely in hindsight. But I tried flipping around the image in other ways to see if I could see anything else, and I couldn't make out anything. So I feel it could still be maybe intentional. Then again, I should have just not flipped it. I should have just used the image and then looped it, since that's how those rooms usually work. So maybe I should do that. But anyway. Yay, Tiger. Appreciation. These shoes could easily be Azrael, would be a weird explanation considering we have 0 examples of a dreamer ever wearing shoes on... oh, maybe. Actually, you're right. Toriel and Nazgûl are barefoot every day, travel in both Undertale and Deltarune, and both Azrael's appearance in Undertale as child and god are also barefoot. I didn't even think about that. You're right. They are always barefoot. Lancer is the night. Yes. He shapeshifts darkness and attacks you in Chapter 1. Some people actually have argued that that was the night shapeshifting, but unfortunately Ralsei has dialogue. If you go look at the top of the cliff, he's like, how did Lancer get up there? Did he ride his bike up the cliff? Intro just sounds like that one Goomba fallacy. I don't... sure. I'm a stupid walking contradiction. I mean, you're gonna have to give context for the intro, because like the whole first like 10 minutes of this video is just an intro. What do you mean the monster is obviously the oil baron? It's supposed to be a mystery. If we were supposed to know who the monster is, it just tells us. It kind of stinks. I actually think the thesis of the knight's identity as a mystery is super interesting and worth discussing. There's a lot to unpack about how people approach twists and reveals. The game is positioned well to play with the idea that the knight has to be anyone. But this video wasn't about mysteries. The real thesis was, I'm mad that Death Knight is so well supported, but the counter evidence is too situational for a real debunk. That is not the point. The point is that it's not, like, it's only well supported in a in a vacuum, and when you add on a bunch of made up nonsense. Like, I don't think that Death's body and mind being split is necessarily bad theory. It's the fact that there's literally nothing to suggest it. I haven't seen anything. It is a complete fabrication that just, we made it up because it's the only way it works. I love when people test their assumptions and come out with new ideas. That kind of critical thought is why story speculation is fun, but it doesn't seem like the goal here. Even in the cognitive dissonance session, you assume the default take is that there's some kind of evil conspiracy that all the antagonists in Chris are on, which in my eyes is way less likely than literally any other explanation. Even if Chris, who dislikes looking at conspiracy boards, dreamer was a good sport about whatever promise they apparently made, Carol Holiday seems to have a strained relationship with literally any major character who could be working with her. Untying these dynamics should be a huge point of discussion. There's so much more to this game than the knight. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm gonna make a video literally trying to tackle the secret identity of like 50 different mysterious characters, including the knight. And if anything, that's why Death Knighters can be so indignant. The breadcrumbs are there, they follow them, but people want to keep retracing those steps, double-checking everything to usually find a knight that has less significance to the main story's theme, and for what? Fair enough. Amalgamate is a very interesting theory. I feel like all the pieces of lore we get in Undertale are ultimately to serve Deltarune's story. Maybe, no. Why do a whole plotline about monster zombies and specifically imply Gaster's involvement in it and not use it for Deltarune? Now, that is true. Because, well, I mean, this is gonna piss people off because, like, the whole, oh my gosh, we're discrediting Alphys. Alphys' whole story arc is this, and now we're just using it for theory crafting. I don't know why people act like that. The story still exists. Just because we used it for theory crafting doesn't change that the story happened, and that Alphys has a great character arc. Obviously, the amalgamates are going to come back in some degree, but to say that they existed solely for Deltarune foreshadowing is a little goofy. I've always really liked Carol Knight for various reasons, but one of my favorites is the fact that Carol speaks in 2 different voices on the phone, yeah. One of them is labored, and the sound is very reminiscent of the Knight's roar voice. No, actually, the sound for Carol's phone, or just the evil phone call, is actually the Gygus sound, the gargled Gygus sound that is used with the amalgamates and with Gaster in the intro segment, which I guess could still be used in the Knight somewhere, but I haven't heard. I mean, it's similar sounds because Toby just likes using those sounds for all the creepy stuff, but I don't know if they're directly connected. Very possible. Then the other time she has a normal voice on the phone, I think on Weird Root. Very possible Carol can get around super fast in Birdo mode? IRL if she can do that. But even if she can't make it make sense that she would be able to move around super fastly and carry a full person in the light world given how strong and quick she is. No, I think I misread that. But even if she can't, it makes sense. Even if she can't, it makes sense that she would. Okay, there. I feel like the characterization of her knighting Chris. No, I like the. Why can I not read? I like the. I mean, we do have 500 comments to go through, so yeah, reading fast is probably the answer here. I like the characterization of her knighting Chris since we know they're working together and kind of feels right to me. It's given the same vibe as you are. Yeah, that is true. I like the idea that Carol manifests the bat because of how obsessed she is. She wants her daughter back so badly, she's literally making wiffle ball bats. Yep. Before it goes back to being her signature black katana. Meanwhile, I'd like to think a Death Knight would continue to use the bat itself. True. Yep. I think yeah, possibly. Death's papyrus, true. Best theory is that Death fell into a dark fountain, becoming lost and paralleling Gaster's tragic end. But how this would translate into Death being the Knight is beyond me. No. Falling into a dark fountain has never caused anyone to melt down into whatever the frick the Knight is. So, it can't just be that, and I don't know why we would mirror Gaster's story when Gaster's story is yet to be told. And even in this hypothesis, Death being the Knight does make sense, so I don't feel that. As of writing this, I think Death is a good Knight candidate. That being said, I remember being an Alvin Knighter in ye old days. I remember dealing with, they literally open a dark fountain, Chris Snyders. I'm not doing that to anyone else. This is a video game. We speculate about it for fun. If other people are having fun with Papyrus Knight theories, who am I to judge? Exactly. And heck, it's not at all as obvious as people claim it is. As pointed out, you have to make a lot of assumptions about how it's being undead in Deltarune to make it work. I myself did not suspect Death at all at first. I was a Carol Knighter for a good while, actually. I needed to be introduced to the idea and slowly convinced of it. I still think Carol Knight isn't completely out of the question, since none of the arguments against her are smoking gun. I can't read. As you said, it's a mystery. We're not supposed to be able to tell yet. True. Even though I really don't want Death to be the Knight, and I think Carol will be better, there's so much evidence for her that trying to imply Papyrus Knight is just as likely a candidate is crazy. Once again, I respect you a lot, homie, but your theories are outrageous and remind me of delusional stuff I see when I do monthly Reddit check. I mean, that's good. That's what I want. And also, I don't think Papyrus Knight is as likely as Death. I never said that. I think he is less likely. That's why he's more likely, because he's less likely. He's not super obvious. He's set up as a Knight candidate, so you can't argue that it's stupid when it gets revealed, but it is not in your face. Papyrus Knight is very background. You really have to dig through to realize the Knight is Papyrus, or to think the Knight is Papyrus. I shouldn't say it as if it's like a given, because it's not. It's not even close. But let's not forget, Toby is constantly pumping out cryptic websites for us to dig through and put in URLs and stuff, so obviously the main looming mystery of Deltarune is going to be hard to figure out. If it was just really easy, it would be weird in comparison to all the other complex digging mysteries that Toby sets up. Unless, of course, the night wasn't supposed to be a mystery, which is still possible. I just disagree. But I fully take on the mantle, the shadow mantle, of being an insane conspiracy theorist. I mean, remember the alien video? I bet you don't. The Roaring Knight? No clue who that is. That's just my bro's Halloween costume. I prefer calling it Battle Body 2.0, but he's insistent that we call it the even greater Battle Body for cool dudes. Thanks, Sans. Alright, now I'm gonna have to look at the timestamp for this one. Okay. To be honest, after watching countless theories, my opinion changed multiple times. Now, I believe it's Des until someone convinces me otherwise. What is it? That thing I am more sure of to some degree. The armor is too similar to one of Undyne the Undying. Distortion when heavily taken damage checks out, so it's something similar. But seeing how much determination and darkness are connected, that convinces me even more so. Still, I'm not 100% sure on who or what it is. Let's let Toby cook. Alright, another timestamp. Okay, breakfast. Because of breakfast being mentioned in a scenetorial, make one, I personally believe this is Azrael. Recently lost, and because of the internet being out, Tenna showing the same shows, this is no way him being missing would go through to Chris. True. Okay, there's another timestamp. Yeah, I saw that video about Azrael being the voice in the code. It was really good, even if I don't necessarily agree with its conclusions. I think it's very likely. Okay, the Yoki part. Toby said that someone he knows makes a very similar game to Deltarune, so... Or maybe he was talking about Temmie. Well, no, because this game wasn't in development at that point. Temmie first made Escape Chasm, which only took about a few months because it was a short game, and that was way later than that tweet. And then, after finishing Escape Chasm, then Temmie went on to make Dweller's Empty Path. There was an older version of Dweller's Empty Path in development for an unknown amount of time, because you can see a bunch of sprites in the code of a higher quality colored-in version of the game, so I don't know how long it's technically been in development, and obviously Temmie's been making this story for a really long time. But again, the difference is saying someone is making a game similar to mine, and versus literally the person who is working on the game I'm working on is also making a game that is similar to mine is weird. The inclusion, like, I thought it said one of my friends, because Omocat is one of Toby's friends, but it didn't. So it seems even more like the project he's talking about isn't connected. It's distant. Toby's not working on it. I mean, Toby made one song for Omori, and I think was, like, at very least helped direct it in the background. I don't know. There was, like, some give and take inspiration between Toby and Omocat. But no, I don't think he was talking about Dweller's Empty Path. Yes. I hope it's Rudy, because it'll effectively make all the Des fan art very funny. Yeah, that's the thing that is really obnoxious, is, like, some people are like, I don't know how where Des Snyders get off at night, where they think they're so cool, because I literally saw a Reddit post that's like, anti-Des Snyders if Des is the Knight, and it's like, I'm so mad, versus Des Snyders if anyone else is the Knight, and like, I am okay with this. You're delusional, because you're the one who has been basing the personality of a character on the Knight in all your fan works, and you're going to have all of them, like, every last one of those fan works is going to be outdated and wrong if Des ends up not being the Knight, whereas, and, like, you've relied so heavily on enjoying Des as a character as the Knight that you don't appreciate Des as a character from what we actually know is true about Des purely. So all this idea of her being this aura farming, cool, nonchalant, all of that all comes from the Knight. And everything you like about Des will be gone, or a lot of what you like about Des will be gone if the knight ends up not being Des. Whereas everyone else, all the other candidates, we like those characters just as they are. And the reason we think they're the knight is because it fits and it would be cool and etc. But if they end up not being the knight, everything we enjoy about those characters will stay the same, other than Everyman, who doesn't really have much of a personality. But, I mean, I still love the Everyman, even if he's not the knight. And he's probably not the knight, because there's not too much related anymore. It means when you look at something with Des in mind, everything looks like Des. True. Misread this: a strange knight appeared and 3 of the kings were locked away. It doesn't say a strange knight... Yeah, no, I didn't misread that. I said that was misread. It says the knight appeared. That... Yeah, that's what I argued in the video. Yeah, maybe you should finish the video before commenting. Goofy, I'm of the small subset of theorists who believe Des is... No, not... where did Des even appear in... See, even it even infects my brain. I read the word the knight, and I read Des subconsciously. This is what you do to me. This is what happens when the brain fandom virus infects people. Because, like, I swear, people are trying to retroactively gaslight you into believing that Des is the knight by drawing all their fan art of Des with the knight's antlers instead of the antlers we see her with in the flashback. It's so annoying. Like, just whatever. Anyway, believe the knight is a darkener, a knife. Makes sense. I know 90% of the fans believe the knight is most likely a lightener, but something about Susie saying it to Chapter 4, the knight loses the instant they steal the fountain, has stayed in my head since the new chapters. Could be wrong, but it's fun to think about, more interesting than the Death Knight theorists who's so adamant. Yeah, it could be. And, like, that's another one where it works, where it's not literally Des as a person, but it's something of Des's or something. Because it could be Des's army knife. All I gotta say is about Papyrus is that if Tricky Tony doesn't use him for a gag date in the Chapter 5 festival, I'm gonna start getting really suspicious. At this point, Papaya could be the knight, and I won't say anything. Papa runs. Papa runs. Great job. My one theory is very simple, and it's what I call Couch 8. It simply states that every member of the Couch tennis shows will have a part in the story. Oh, okay. That includes Azrael and Rudy. I mean, why would you even develop Rudy if he wasn't going to be a big deal? Rudy Knight. True. Turtles can't leave their shells. It's a part of their skeletons. That's why I specifically said in cartoons. I know that. Papyrus Knight is too obvious. No, it's not. If it was that obvious, there would be more people who sincerely believe it instead of just joking about it. Personally, I'm a Death Knight believer because it's the most narratively satisfying, although I really like Droon's take on Friend piloting her. If Friend ends up being the true big bad of the story, I won't be upset with who the Knight ends up being, since there's way more to enjoy with the storyline than the identity of the Knight. True. I think we never will know who the Knight is, because is that even matter? Who is he? What? Yeah, I do think if the Knight is to Chris what something is to Sunny and Amori, I do think there's a possibility the Knight's identity is never actually revealed, only under the idea that the Knight is like a manifestation of trauma. Like, obviously the Knight is a manifestation of things related to Des, but it never like spells it out what the Knight is. That could be interesting, but I find that less likely since Friend and Eram are also kind of doing the same song and dance about being like this trauma manifestation, that I think the Knight wouldn't be a trauma manifestation. Not literally, at least. Okay, I think it's kind of the point of the release schedule. Sure, he's excited to share, because images are distorted. We are currently in the dark. Images of reality are distorted the further we get in these chapters, because the more we look, the more in the dark we realize we are, how much information we need. This game is asking, what do you see, with a pure lack of information and shapes set by the past experiences of Undertale? We see and hear things that may not exist. That is a really cool analysis. That is so true. Could be a Mystery of Batwoman style situation in 2008, where 3 separate people take on the role at different times. that idea does just, it falls off. I mean, I guess if like if the knight armor is like a separate entity, or like the Shadow Mantle or something, I guess, but what's the point of that? Then you just like, when the inevitable reveal of the knight is just 3 different people taking on the role of trying to find Des, it's going to make the characterization less deep, because you're trying to ping pong it between 3 different characters. As I see it, it was always supposed to be a mystery, but meant to be relatively short, with probably being revealed in Chapter 5, since they originally were going to release together. If that was the case, then in the same amount of time, we'd get the knight shown and their identity revealed, eliminating the story discourse, because we had Chapter 5 released separately. I don't think, like, I'm thinking. I mean, yes, Chapter 5 was going to be released with... Well, but yeah, but you can have a mystery play out in the, A mystery doesn't have to be something you linger on after you finish the chapter. It can be something that you discuss as you play through the game. You're like, ooh, like... And then the payoff will be cool, like, just with you as the player. It's not like you beat the game and then you go digging through the files to find all the little evidence. It's just like, ooh, could it be this person, could it be this person? Ooh, it keeps you waiting, build up, and then boom, there's the reveal. And then all the little details are just, like, to look in hindsight, like, whoa, that was there the whole time. I don't think that invalidates it being a mystery. Not necessarily one... And of course, let's also... Toby isn't dumb. He definitely is retroactively changing things in the chapters based on the fact that, he's deliberately leaving us with questions at the end, at the cliffhangers. Just because they weren't originally meant to be cliffhangers doesn't mean Toby doesn't retroactively turn them into cliffhangers. Okay, who's your favorite YouTuber, Rosie? Okay, Half-Bred Chaos, cool. Yeah, Half-Bred Chaos is like the coolest. Like, my style of theorizing is so similar to Half-Bred Chaos's, where it's not like, oh, let's solve the entire story and predict the whole thing. Let's just go on a wild goose chase with this crazy evidence I found. That would be interesting, but why does Rules card randomly show up? I don't even know what you're talking about. That was some real strawman argument for Death Knight, or strawman argument for or against Death Knight, and which one? Because I brought up like 5 different possibilities. My theory is that we can't figure out who the knight is because we are making false assumptions that only... Okay, we're going with this again. Carol in both Chapter 3 and Rudy in... Okay, this is more interesting because we're actually trying to figure out which one's which. Carol in Chapter 3, Rudy in Chapter 4. In Chapter 3, we encounter Carol Knight, strong battle, Carrie Undyne, Chris cooperates, starts hitting harder once she hurts the friends, shows respect for Chris. Yep, that again. That was cool. Only emotion she shows, other than fighting, is sorrow, crying, which can't be Chapter 4 Knight, because she's in her... Okay, no, we're not doing this, but we'll entertain it. We encounter Rudy Knight, avoids battle, runs away, summons Titan, he's too sick. You know, Chris doesn't attack him. First cutscene, if you make it all the way to... Actually... I'm thinking this could actually be really good, because the 4 Knights thing falls flat because chess theory has taken a step back, but 2 Knights does still work because of the prophecy, the Rousey Titans scene. The problem that I was getting with is like, why? Why just 2? Why 2 Knights? It's such a specific number. But if it's husband and wife, and this is like a power couple villain, that is really awesome. Like switching roles, or no, playing the same role because they have the same goal, and like doing like a scream thing, that could be really cool. That, yeah, actually, now that I'm thinking about that, this is a very compelling idea. Let's continue reading. This is why Chris, I already read that. Chris would be able to feign allegiance to Susie by attacking just once. As we know, Carol Knight has strength to tank attacks. More whimsical and horrifying, which is Rudy's personality. That is also a good point, that the personality difference for the knight between Chapter 3 and 4. Laughs at Susie's threat because he also threatens her in the hospital, and who cannot be the Chapter 3 knight because he's too weak to carry a struggling Undyne. Not only are they both the knight, but they're both working with Asgore, who's going to cause the roaring in Chapter 5 by creating a dark fountain outside. I don't think he's going to cause the roaring immediately. It just seems like a weird choice. Like, what does Asgore have to gain from causing the roaring? unless he's just stupid and does it on accident. Which will grow without bounds, unlike indoor, and cover the world in darkness. Yep. We see 3 titans, 2 on the sides that look like the knight, standing behind it. Yep, which looks like Asgore. That's a good point. Toby doesn't write evil characters. The roaring is not being done out of malice, but out of desperation. Who would be more desperate than 2 parents grieving over the loss of their daughter? That is really good. The roaring is going to be done as a mechanism to find Des. My theory is that they suspect that her dust is somewhere outside, perhaps lost where the forest would grow. Yeah. And she will be revived through her dust. The reason the knights are opening fountains instead of just flat out causing the roaring is because they always need to make sure Chris is strong enough and familiar enough with the Dark Worlds to navigate the roaring Dark World, because the soul makes them play a pivotal role in finding Des. And you could even add on to that, they're making fountains in these different locations because they're places that Des was. Like, they don't know where she died, they don't know where her dust is, so it could be here, it could be here. That is really compelling, actually. I gotta give props to that. Nothing to add to the conversation. Loki thought it was evident at first, but no way I couldn't get it till now. The knight is obviously... Okay. Enemy called Night Night, which is a joke name that points to a key characteristic of their sleepiness. Night is in need of sleep. Night is when people go to sleep, and what do? Dream. That feels like described by Susie to be like a dream, a dark world. That's what this is. And Dream in Chapter 3, the night, if I'm not wrong, they use the swoon ability, which causes to knock them out, putting them to sleep, but violently. Funny how Night and the night both have similarities and correlations to sleep and nights. The ending song in credits is Never Ending Night. Think for a moment, it may be a stretch because it makes it obvious that the night is the night. Could be wrong, but I'm onto something, hence the name Crack Theory. Okay, just a joke. That is a good idea. The problem is that it's not all that interesting. Like, yes, the evidence is there that it could be some sort of nightmare, but again, we have Eram, who is literally named Nightmare, who is playing that role way better, so why would the night also be a nightmare manifest? But I definitely think there is important things to look at between the Night and the night, and specifically just everything in the core. The core is really weird, and I do have a theory about the core that I'm working on. Actually, I'm not working on it. I haven't worked on it in like a half a year. I guess, honestly, I'll just put it here since there's a good chance I'll never finish that video before Chapter 5 comes out. I think the core, since the core is made by Gaster, it was a prototype Dark Fountain. The reason the enemies are all medieval themed, and they appear as black sausages in the overworld, which they even call out in the game. They're like, why do I look like a black sausage and not a knight? So they're unaware, they don't know what's going on, so it can't be their ability. Obviously, it could be a joke, but I think that's dumb, because, like, why did Toby randomly decide we need weird shadow figures in this area? In fact, usually encounters don't appear on the overworld. So it's a really weird and deliberate thing. There's also all this stuff about paths and, like, the way of the sage, the way of the warrior, blah, 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 blah. Gaster is a nerd. Basically, prototype Dark Fountain, we're seeing monsters, like, being transformed by the darkness. Being, like, proto-darkners. And that's why the night looks like the night, because the night is also just like the essence of darkness. They're both essences of darkness. Hopefully that made sense. Anyway, I'm gonna move on. Long one, based on Papyrus Knight. This is not that long, actually. Betting Papyrus Knight, I hold stock on him being the knight due to well-written doc on how it lines up well. I think it might be a bit silly if he's revealed to be the knight, at least initially. I think the community would accept it regardless. However, I do believe the knight is probably Rudy, Asgore, or Papyrus. Okay. I think Asgore is my main choice, but I'm fine with that not being true. Asgore is one of the few candidates who are actually involved in the Dark Worlds. Well, we don't actually know that. We just know he has a black shard. The way he talks can leave doubt for if he knows what's actually going on. Carol could have given it to him. He is also first seen coming, from the shelter in Chapter 4, immediately after the knight goes to it in Chapter 3. He has a dark shard, so he knows of the knight, or is the knight, not necessarily. He is actually the first person you see in Chapter 4 after Chris calls someone. I understand Carol comes over, but Asgore also comes over. I get that this point is probably less true, but nothing explicitly goes against it either. Chris gets knighted by the Roaring Knight. In history, kings would be the ones to knight people. Good point. He's the Flower King, knights Chris. Asgore has done bad things for good reasons, so I'm acting like that isn't unfounded. He's a stronger candidate than people think. but he's not the best or only. That's, yeah. Just since I didn't mention Asgore as a candidate in the video, I would like to add that since the biggest thing that people are going to say that Asgore can't be the knight is because the knight is so slender, but Asgore is fat, obese, big back. Anyway, no. But obviously, again, knight is shapeshifter, but like you have to have a reason why you would take that form over the form you already look like, especially since the Titans already appear pretty large and bulky. But Asgore is quite, even though he is still a big guy, he is literally starving in the light world. He isn't eating well. So him appearing as this starving, slender figure actually does work narratively. Because again, their Dark World forms are based on their minds. They're based on their, and other stuff. You get the point. I used to believe in Death's Knight, but I actually really love the idea of Death's Soul now. Oh yeah, I completely forgot to say anything about Death's Soul theory. I was supposed to put that in a footnote at least during the counter evidence part, where it's like there's a lot of evidence that Death is trapped inside the Red Soul and something to do with the Weird Root. But anyway, I used to believe in, okay, just because it adds an extra emotional layer to the Chris-Death dynamic. It reminds me of Azrael's, you know why I'm fighting to keep you around, because I care about you. You're the only one who understands. It adds the idea of Chris trying to control the soul by keeping it contained, because everyone in the Evil Eye group chat wants to see Death come back regardless of what she wants. I don't hate you, I'm frustrated with you. Good point. So Azrael's Death 2.0, pretty much. Except with, well no, because it doesn't necessarily mean that Azrael has to be the knight. Why would they believe in Jaru's work? Oh my gosh, what is with your hate towards Jaru? It's so forced. Takes all the plot relevance from Death because she can't be the code and the knight at the same time, but Azrael can, and trust me, Deltarune will play out exactly the same as Undertale. In fact, is 100% connected to time lift. Stop that! Just shut up. You're the one who's trying to imply incest. You're the ones who are making it weird. He literally gave his explanation in the video for why the behavior is like that. You're the one making it weird. You're the one who's choosing to say, because in his mind, in the tough love angle, Des can be seen as someone who is hard on their sister and is very conventional or something along those lines, and is like pushing her into a certain degree, like kind of like a mother. Like the whole deal with the thorn ring isn't that me as the evil soul is the one who wants to marry you, but I'm pushing you to wear this ring to marry the other thing that will freaking help my goal, like an arranged marriage deal. Yes, the Weird Route undeniably has themes of toxic relationships, but that doesn't mean that you, Chris, or the soul are supposed to be in the groom position. You can just be the one arranging it to whatever horrible entity is on the other side. They say that the story explores dark themes, doesn't make it bad, but no, it freaking doesn't. You don't know anything. She didn't. Oh wait, this is a yeah, this is freaking a thread. Didn't watch Azrael Dust 2.0, something similar. Mainly got the idea of Death's soul theory from both Death's shoes theory, where it's revealed that she's several human shoes, and the fact that we take control of the black Goomba thing in the Mantle game. How do you explain the Weird Root? They can't expect by killing everything. See, you're just being an egotistical person. What do you mean, everything we know? It's always with the we. Can you just say I? Everything I think I know about Des. Why you gotta act like everyone is on your side? The only way they could explain the Weird Root and its implication is to ignore the parts or make Des a complete weirdo. Because I hate Jaru with a burning passion, even though he got most of his theories right. And I'm just salty that none of my theories were true. Death's soul does have very weird implications. Jaru created that theory because he can't handle that part is true. He is definitely against the meta-narrative for some reason. Even made a bridge theory saying if Gaster and the others are talking to us, that it wouldn't be meta. I don't care. It's his prerogative. I really think Death's soul conflicts with the weird... I don't think Death's soul conflicts with the Weird Root. Of course not. It's where the most evidence comes from. it could either be Des trying to make Noelle stronger, or it could be that Des and Chris lack autonomy. Once we start using more aggressive and forceful commands akin to us having some sort of demonic possession of both soul and body. Remember that Kara killed Brother Azrael Flowey in genocide route, and if Des' soul is true, Des probably has a similar state of mind. I don't know why this still is the main consensus. This doesn't have to do with Kara, but since Kara was brought up, why do we still believe that Kara takes control at the end? You still have to press the button to advance the dialogue, and at that point there is no going back, so you basically are hitting the fight button even if it doesn't show up. It's still the player attacking Flowey. I don't know why anyone says otherwise. Top candidates are the Holiday family aside from Noelle. Oven has been the most deconfirmed because I think his role will be different. Ezreal's possibility, but unlikely. Papyrus has just been a joke pick for me, but I won't deny there's a possibility he's manipulated by Carol or friend. Sure. I definitely need this humility test. I was a Chris Knight truther. Chris that went Snowgrave route and loaded. No, if it's someone from the weird route in a time loop, it's probably Noelle. This isn't entirely the point of the video, but I figured to talk about Rudy Knight in 2 statements. We know Chris is working with the Knight, unless you want to say they're in contact with a missing teenager. This cuts out Des and Papyrus, I guess. It really just leaves us with Carol, Rudy, and Asgore. The series guesses. The person who made the Dark Fountain in the church, the Knight, had to be close enough to Gerson to essentially revive him. Susie's world wouldn't do it, but the Knight could. Rudy is way more religious than Carol, though maybe she just can't go to church due to being busy, even on Sundays. And Asgore doesn't go to church. Yes, he does. What are you talking about? You say Alvin says Asgore literally comes to church to pray like every day, because he's crazy. Rudy risked his illness getting worse just to go to church. Of course, he was close to Gerson. With these 2 facts alone, I think it already points to Rudy. There's so much more that does point to him that it's the easiest way to it. But this is But you see, even though Gerson is associated in religion... Oh, actually, let me think. No, never mind. Yeah, sure. I think there's a pretty good argument for a twist villain that could take a lot more seriously, though Toby is the kind of writer I can't read. I'm an Undertale fan. Noelle Knighters have to fight for every inch. Yeah, of course. I mean, it is one of the hardest to sell. Even, like, it has the most evidence, but the most contradictions at the same time. And the only possible Knight candidates of the holidays and Dreamers, the Knight has to be a monster, because only monsters and Darkners can do magic, so the Knight can't be human. That is a good point. But, you see, like, while everything is technically magic, like darkness, determination, magic, etc., that's all technically magic. In Undertale, magic is a specific category, and it's usually white. So the darkness can potentially be like a opposite. Like, you don't need magic to use darkness powers. It's kind of annoying, but like, we know that determination and darkness are 2 sides of the same coin, basically. We don't know what magic necessarily is in relation to it, so it could still be a human. Knows Gerson excludes anyone after Gerson died, which includes that is a good point. Or is it? Because we don't know where Gerson lived. He is famous throughout the world. He isn't necessarily from... Oh, no, I mean, no, he's definitely from hometown. But he could have been in other places. Papyrus and Sans have been traveling various times. Heck, does it ever actually say that Sans and his brother moved in recently? Or does it just say Sans moved in recently? Because for all we know, Papyrus was already living there, and then living situations changed, and then Sans moved in. But that is a good point that I'll have to think about more. Can't be a Darkner that we meet. Now I believe if Death Knight, due to the Knight's motive to cause the roaring, if you don't believe me, then the Knight fight act with Ralsei, but he doesn't technically know that. Do the Knight's motives of this 100% rule out Azrael, Asgore, and Rudy? No, due to the Knight's motives. Why does it rule out them? Didn't Carol is a red herring? That's not helpful. That is not an argument. But why did it rule them out? You gotta elaborate. Personally, I believe the Knight is more so an archetype of Des. An egregore, I don't know that word. Either way, I don't think it's fully Des, rather a fractured piece that is certainly not some shambling corpse, though honestly I hope that whoever it is, it makes sense. Perhaps it's Asgore in some distant theoretical insanity. Yeah. It's obviously supposed to be Des in a narrative sense, but it's not literally Des. People are setting themselves up for the disappointment with Night theories because it's absurdly likely their identity will be revealed in Chapter 5, which is supposed to come out in the same time. But it's not something that was supposed to be theorized for 1 year, but 3 hours. Kind of. 3 hours? I don't think you're getting through all those chapters in 3 hours. I took 10 hours on Chapter 3. Alone. Well, actually, no. More like 7 hours, because then I played Chapter 4 at the same time. Chris Knight was a theory when less than 30% of the game was out. You can't really bring it up as steel proof of it being the same situation. Yes, I can. The point isn't that... The point is that they're acting exactly the same. And also, depending on how you look at it, Chris Knight was more likely than Des Knight because we had less to know about what the Knight was. Grandpa Dasher. Who the freak is that? Well, why not consider other possibilities? Because there aren't actually possibilities to consider. The Knight wielding Des is bad and having reindeers. No, it freaking doesn't. I've already explained to you, and it shouldn't even need to be explained to you, that symbolism exists. They don't literally have to have antlers and a bat. Carol is a red... Oh my gosh, it's not the Knight. Rudy isn't the Knight because he's dying in bed, or an additional character. Okay, now you're just being the exact person that I said should not comment on this, because... What do you mean character assassination? He hasn't done anything yet. How do you assassinate a character who hasn't had an arc yet? Rudy isn't the Knight. Noelle is not the Knight because it's physically impossible. That's not true. She already has a major role in the story. That's a decent point. Which would require a character to be established. No, because she already disassociates. You can argue she has split personality disorders pretty easily. And it could also be like... Since whatever we're doing to Noelle in the Weird Root is obviously going to break the rules of reality, it could be Weird Root Noelle from another timeline, etc. Ram's comments about Chris playing make-believe with that girl recontextualizes the first 3 Dark Worlds as reenactments of Chris and the Knight's games when they were kids. Does it? I mean, kind of, but not explicitly. It's just they imprinted their will onto objects, which made them easier to come to life, and they came to life as as those characters that they imagined. And also, that girl doesn't have to be Des. It could easily be Noelle. Certain people don't want to accept Des as an answer because she's too convenient mystery box we know little about, but everything we do know about her does line up with the Knight, and a convenient mystery character who doesn't need accountability and hardly has an established character that constraints or conflicts with them is the exact solution you want as a writer for your mystery villain. No, not really. I don't know. Again, we're doing this whole thing where like it has to be this way because writing. Toby is a bold writer. He has always been writing stories that no one else has had the balls to, that no one has even thought of doing. Well, okay, maybe not like that, but he is ahead of the curve and writes stories that barely have been seen before, and when they are, they haven't been written to such a degree where they've become as iconic as Undertale or Deltarune. He does not live in a box of writing tropes, or whatever you want to say about it. Always trust in Papyrus Knight. Definitive theory is the Knight is a manifestation of either Des or Azrael's grief and determination, so it's a distorted doppelganger. Yep. Isn't a person. Yeah, it's possible. Or Grimchild. How did Grimchild get involved in this? Oh, someone else pointed it out. Yeah. Okay. Bet on Papyrus Knight. I can still see the shape. What shape? I feel like I'm gonna regret looking at this. The skirt. If Carol is the Knight and Des is the Knight and Azrael is the Knight, then who's driving the bus? Toriel, she's the only one who's ever driven. Nope, the snail guy drew. Funny, 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 funny. Ideas and themes mentioned in... Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't care how godlike of the storyteller Toby Fox, if the knight removes his helmet and there's Papyrus head underneath, 90% of the fan base is gonna laugh. And that's okay. It can be funny and still be serious. There should be a scene where we see Des holding the knight's helmet before Papyrus in the knight's armor. Where we see Des holding the knight's helmet before Papyrus in the knight's armor. Save for obviously the helmet swoons her and asks why she stole his battle body helmet. No, like if Papyrus isn't the knight, but they want to still do a fake out, they could easily have Papyrus take off his head. Like, whoever the knight is could just hide their head in the armor. Papyrus could take off his head, put it on the knight's neck. What are you talking about? I literally gave you a serious story about Papyrus Knight. He thinks Papyrus Knight would be treated like a gag. I don't think Papyrus Knight... Oh, but if it happened, it wouldn't be a joke. Yeah, it'd be... It can still be funny. It doesn't have to be... Like, you can laugh at something that isn't a joke. This is the opposite of what I'm trying to argue. Oh no, there's more replies. Being a manifestation. Flat. That is just because you are being mean to Papyrus. He's not a joke. Did I miss some replies from that? No. Oh no, I did. Just romantic undertones. Exactly! No idea. The control system works. Kara was probably sold. Kara soul enthusiast. Cool. I do think like Kara is in the soul, but I don't think Kara, when Kara said you're not the one in control, they weren't talking about the fact that I was secretly in control the whole time. They're literally just saying, you aren't the boss of me. I'm above all of you. I'm literally the... Like, my name translates to punishment in another language. I am the consequences. You're not above me. That's all it means. Yep, finally a mention of Frisk smiling in the genocide run. Don't know why that gets overlooked. It's easily be doing that. Feel similar pressure. Just complete lack of autonomy. Exactly. It's freaking... You're the one making it problematic. And besides, it's not like we don't... It's not like Des has to be a good person. We don't know... Like, obviously the absurd Des groomer truthers went way too far with it. But there is an... The reason that existed is because there was a decent amount of evidence for it. People are arguing because they want their favorite character to be a good person for some reason. Like, you can't enjoy a morally depraved person as a character. I think it's kind of stupid. Amazing piece of evidence for Father Alvin making the first century but not being the knight is the fact that it's the only noticeable smaller fountain in all the other fountains. That is true. Good point. Fountain covers 3 rooms though. How's it not bigger? Oh, that's also a good point, because maybe the fountain's just smaller because it's spread more. Covers the same. Oh, true. All good points around. Spread is smaller. Thought it was because of the fountain. Ralsei mentions the knight made both. Oh, true. All good points around. The narrator addresses that Chris exists here. Usually doesn't do that. No. Well, I mean, that happens in the chapter 4 egg room. But that, well, yeah. Some instances where Chris's repressed trauma takes a tangible form, them disassociating in the narrative, emphasizing how the event is Chris-centric. Yeah, obviously. Wouldn't even mind Death Knight if not for the fact of everyone being Puritans about it. Exactly. Everyone is being 16th century Protestants who aim to completely distance themselves from the Roman Catholic Church tradition about Death Knight. Yes, understand you took being obtuse. Gospel and act like if you think of any other just canon is viable, then you're stupid, extra for general. Satisfying. Why find her if she's not in control? Then why have it be her and not some other Dark World thing? I don't know what you're even disagreeing about. Actually, given what I've experienced. Okay. People act like it's obvious Death is the night, the more I hope it's not the case. Most likely, but I wouldn't dislike it if it were true at all. But it's, yeah. Fair. You can get it, just like, you know, it's people who say that Death's not being the night would be bad storytelling or funny, because that would legitimately be so much better. Death shouldn't be saved. Whatever Death's current fate is, trapped dead. The idea that we can't find her would hit much more harder than any happy ending. I mean, Death being the night doesn't make it a happy ending, but that is a good point. We find her in a Dark World, maybe in the Holiday House. She's just dead. Just find her dead, seeing how fans have molded her and make excuses for how she could be the night just for her to be. Makes me have, okay, that's a lit aggressive. You're the one who's freaking commenting on every single person's theory, telling them that they don't know what storytelling is. Which, in real life, missing person cases rarely have happy endings. The comfort is finding closure, to know what happened. Nostalgia, grief, escapism, these are all things that Deltarune is talking about. In order to take those themes in a satisfying direction, I think the story would be stronger if we accept that she's gone. Yeah, but it can still be the night, because the night is like a corpse. Papyrus' flaw is that he's too kind. How could he ever be the night? The night brutally beats kids, refuses to explain its plan like a reasonable person, is seen as a horrible beast, laughs in Susie's face, blah blah blah. Which could kill her. If Papyrus is the night, then he's not Papyrus anymore. I mean, kind of, but also no. Because, again, we're obviously being set up with a subversion. Like, Susie thinks the Knight is this evil, horrible person who just wants to destroy the world. But they're just doing what they have to. I mean, fighting you was what Papyrus... yeah, that's actually another piece of Papyrus Knight evidence, is the fact that Papyrus is the only character to beat you and then not result in a game over. He just sends you to his shed, and the Knight also beats you and doesn't result in a game over. So, I don't know what makes the Knight beating up these guys any more brutal than when Papyrus beats up Frisk. Refused to explain his plans like a reasonable person. There could be a good reason for that. But I'll have to gatekeep the reason for my video. Seen as a horrible beast, that's an opinion. Laughs in Susie's face. Papyrus loves to laugh. Which could kill her, that part is true. But, like, could and, like, we have a prophecy. Obviously the game over isn't a part of the prophecy. The Knight knows what is and isn't going to work. This is the same deal with, like, oh, why would if the Knight doesn't want to cause the roaring, why would they summon a Titan in the first place? The Knight knows that they're going to win. Honestly, the Knight summoning a Titan is one of the more perplexing details about the Knight, in no matter who the candidate is. No, it isn't. There are 1001 reasons. It was brutal, they'd be turned into juice. Papyrus has also committed crimes, exactly. Pre-character development, Papyrus. Mention, we're talking about someone who may be shut up, you have nothing better to do with your time. There's also the possibility that Sansa Papyrus had put it on an act knowing the anomaly was out there. That's also a thing that I haven't that people have barely took into account, is the whole anomaly deal with Sans, and that could play a role in it if it's Papyrus. Personally, I don't think it is. I don't think it should be. I think Papyrus's connection with a certain other character is much more compelling. Was out there, and Papyrus isn't actually as nice and naive as we're led to believe. In fact, he's implied in many places to be far more. He looks like a charm. He's endeared by Flowey. Yes, yes. Ironic that the fandom for Deltarune, a game which espouses defying fate and creating your own stories, has developed a state of adherence to orthodoxy. Night Theory Discourse is easily the worst offender for that. I learned to not engage with it when I kept seeing Des and Carol Niders accusing each other of not reading the correct amount into the lore, either too deep or not deep enough to dismiss their opposing candidates as a red herring, as if only their answer has significance. Why can we just accept the fact that evidence for the Knight candidates is relevant? Why is it wrong to let Rudy and Papyrus have major story roles? Exactly. Ignore the... Yeah, it's freaking... No, you're not the... God, you're not the freaking Catholic Church. This is an echo chamber. Exactly. Would not be hijacking the story. How would he? Again, even with the basic explanation I explained without getting into the deep detail of how Papyrus's relationship as the Knight is awesome, very simply, we have this character who is under the guide of Carol to find Des, and they do it because they're a kind person and they want to help a grieving mother. Is that complicated? Not really. I don't think many do aside from memeing about it. You act as if he hasn't been mentioned. Sans has brought him up in every chapter when we talk to him, even if not by name, hinting at someone who turns out to be a villain in a missable fashion is established storytelling. Exactly. The only problem is that it's genuinely 100% missable if you never talk to Sans, but presumably your Sans would have an unskippable role, probably in Chapter 5, since Sans is going to have something to do with Asgore's jealousy. But technically, depending on how you look at it, the fact that Papyrus is mentioned on the Steam page is technically unskippable. If you open up the Steam page and you see it, there's Papyrus's name right there. Yeah, you don't have to read that, but yeah, you could theoretically not read any dialogue in Deltarune and just mash through the whole thing. Why is nobody allowed to entertain the idea of Papyrus? Because I am Mr. More superior than you about storytelling. That's why. Why would Toby even consider using this specific visual effect if it signifies a Darkener? Because the Knight isn't a normal Lightner. It has the same sort of visual identity as Shadowman and Titan. Static effect. High damage is dealt with Titan. It has the ability to shapeshift into an entirely humanoid forms. Inhumanoid forms. Think it's entirely possible the Knight might have been set up by Spamton. The idea of Darkener absorbing a Lightner's soul. Spamton even suggests that doing so might allow him to... That is a good point. Except I doubt that Spamton would be so important that he... No, wait. Actually, no. That can't... Good idea about the parallels, but definitely not about Spamton being the one behind it. It's just an idea that's circulating somewhere. Because in the Spamton Q&A, Spamton very clearly says he doesn't know who the Knight is. He knows something about the Knight, but he doesn't know who it is. So he obviously isn't associated, unless he's just lying. But I can't really think of any times when Spamton outwardly lies, even if he's trying to manipulate you. For which, the one's character that is conveniently missing and whose disappearance is tied to the bunker, lost where the force would grow, the children follow the pointed tail. Chris being scared of the bunker and spreading rumors of something being inside is the clearest candidate. Yeah, people might sometimes be a bit too harsh the way they phrase it, but the Death Knight is popular precisely because of what you end up with when trying to consider the logistics of what we know at the Knight. I mean, yeah. I never said it wasn't likely. In fact, I literally said there was overwhelming evidence. So, would the Knight be a Darkener that has absorbed Death's soul? Oh, wait, we're on the same... oh, this is a thread. So, would the Knight be a Darkener that has absorbed Death's soul? The general take for Death's Knight is, yes, specifically friend, the Tale of Hell, hijacking her body. Well, then it just becomes the other theory. That part about it being a Darkener doesn't even matter anymore. Because friend as a weird device can just as easily take over the body of a living person, a dead person. I mean, it could be living too. With how unsure we are about what the frick friend even is. Could be, I'm not certain. Details. We've never seen on Lightner with those transformations. Blatantly unreliable narrator, not really. Oh, it's you again. He's not an unreliable narrator, he's just so bad at speaking that you have to question everything he says. It's not what that means. He's not a narrator, true, and doesn't change the simple fact that the plot has established the idea of a Darkener taking the power of a Lightner, and whether or not he's correct that it can be done doesn't change the fact that Toby wanted us to question the idea of it. So he wrote it into the story. It's basically a Chekhov's gun. If you're not willing to accept Spampton example, let's not forget that Burley outright tells us that Queen's plugs sapped some of his power. Oh, true. Goodman Flowey uses 2 vines to restrain Papyrus, 4 vines, everyone else has 2. Yeah, but that's not like a big deal to the knight. If this is the knight, I'm sure whatever Toby gives us will be good. He's earned the benefit of the doubt. There's amazing work, but Death Knight feels wrong. Like, why is Carol evil? It's because she wants to find Death. Well, congrats, you found her. She's right there. Then again, I'm a Ruiny Knight truther, and you know what they say about throwing stones in glass houses. Literally, the only evidence I have is antlers plus not Carol or Noelle plus mean to Susie. She's cold and stern. This is the first real point you've made. Agree with that. She's literally a grieving mother, but I was simplifying it. Yes. Only 11 minutes in, but someone has believed Carol the Knight rather than Death. Thank you for making the video, speaking against how Death Knight has become considered a fact. Enough to make you cry. Maybe you're a little bit obsessed at that point. It's pretty silly since in Chapter 2 everyone considered Chris Knight as such, and look what happened. What are you talking about? People were saying that the game... People were saying that the game lets you think Chris is the knight, but actually red herring. Chris Knight was very contentious. Well, yeah, it was contentious and disagreed. In fact, at a certain point, it became the laughingstock. But the point is that Chris Knighters acted that way, the same way that Death Knighters are acting now. Only difference is now it's so irrelevant to the point where now it is the norm. No one is going to call you stupid for believing in Death Knight. Not that they should, but the way they're toxic about it is the same. So much of the discussion around the knight relies on people blindly assuming that their own intuitions about what good storytelling is are A, correct, and B, shared by Toby, and their beliefs about what kind of story this are correct, whatever. Remember, the same fandom consensus was confident that the game would have a much slower pace than it actually did, and that the knight wouldn't physically appear until Chapter 5. Yes. I played Undertale and thought it was good, so most of the fan base is probably on the same wavelength as Toby. That is not how that works. Delta Traveler is an indication that's not how that works. Papyrus Knight. Shut up. At this point of the story, exactly. We're not done with the story. And no, it wouldn't, because I still made it work even without going into detail. And in a very broad way, most of us like quirky RPGs with deep story to the point where you can more or less agree what would be a garbage story. Papyrus being revealed at this point would be one of them. No. I'll say that I feel the fandom is too quickly latched on to Death Knight uncritically. It's probably the most likely candidate, but there are issues like how it requires us to assume that Death has transformed into some kind of shape-shifting shadow monster, or that her mind is lost in the code. Well, I haven't checked the recording in a while. I should. Oh my gosh, I've been here for an hour and 21 minutes. Her mind is lost in the code, but to be puppeteered by friend or guest or some all things are possible, of course. But it feels like the fandom's kind of taken those wild hypotheses as confirmed fact, as if Death is an abomination now, just straight up known, to the point where we no longer see how weird and out there of an assumption it is. Exactly. Biggest question I have is the motives of Team Knight. If the Knight is December, then what are they doing this for? If not to be comically evil, there's no plot line that's present that could be shown with some kind of motive. But if the Knight is someone else, like Azrael, then there's suddenly a very obvious thread of the Team Knight finding December. Unless, of course, it's the Amalgamate one and they need to sacrifice another person to keep her body together. I'm definitely on Team Death Knight, but this is absolutely a great point. Hell, I'm thinking critically, the most obstructive point to figuring out the Knight's identity is the exact same point Gerson raises. Why are they doing this? Regardless of what you think the Knight or Death or Carol is, Gaster or Trashy, we have no idea what the goal and motivation of the Knight and its allies are, which is intriguing. Bad thing is a stretch anyway, because Death is described as specifically having a wiffle ball, not a baseball bat. The sort of look dubious like a baseball bat. A wiffle ball bat borderline is a stick with a very slight indent for a handle. Is it? I have a wiffle ball bat. It doesn't look that different. Unless I don't have a wiffle ball bat and it's just a really bad plastic whatever bat. Oh wow. I'm really... No. You're just looking at one kind of wiffle ball bat. It comes in different shapes. Not a good point. Borderline... Sorry, but the fact that the bat has a pointed tip in the sprite file confirming it's a sort of... Okay, just because I don't think it's literally a bat doesn't mean that it's not obviously supposed to look like a bat. I don't think it's a bat either. Many people have argued with the same thing. I'm definitely a Death Knight truther, but I enjoy your take on this and I actually look forward to the full video on evidence. I hold the opinion that Papyrus is too much of a joke character to be the Knight. He's not a joke character, he's just fun. He's just a funny guy. This doesn't make him a joke. And while there were a lot of connections across different pieces of media, I think just being an inside joke among Toby and his friends, either way, it seems all fandoms since forever have had those people who treat others takes harshly for no good reason. Additionally, people forget that the game was meant to be digested all. No, it wasn't. It was never going to be all at once. It was going to be up to chapter 5, and then we don't know. Not with years between chapters. Those of us who are chronically online in the fandom don't realize how little death is talked about in the main unavoidable parts of the game. Most of the Easter eggs in the code, at least a little bit, hold us over between chapters and keep us talking interest. Great video. We have a link to the background music. Yes, I'll give it later. I don't think Papyrus is a joke character, more so his role is being saved for something else. Yeah. The Knight's identity is supposed to be a mystery, maybe to the first players and Susie, obviously, because Susie's deliberately written down little about what's happening. Let's be honest, ignoring all the obvious low reasons for why it's 100% us, it would be... Okay. Imagine being a first-time player of Deltarune and the Knight is Papyrus in the game. From the game you played back in 2015 and has some backstory explaining why he, the Knight, that conceptually completely unrelated to everything we've seen. Same for Rudy Knight. Why is the sick dad of Noel all for the sake of doing shocking plot twists? No, it's not. This is not for the sake of pulling the rug under your feet. This is called you don't know what this character is yet. You don't know what the objective of the Knight as a character is yet, other than an antagonist. This isn't just to be a plot twist for the sake of a plot twist. So not only do we have to choose story guides to choose them over the more satisfying, interesting option to this players do know about and want to learn more of. This is sorry, Chris Knight wasn't really disproven after chapter 2. Everyone tried to disprove Chris Knight, saying, well, they're really fun to go on an adventure, blah, 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 blah. Those were both wrong. Meanwhile, Chris Knighters who said they did it because they were plotting something evil were right. But that's not the point. The point is Chris is not the entity known as the Knight. So, like, whatever. You don't know what the plot of Deltarune is actually about. So you can't say that it's bad. It's only bad storytelling because you think you know what the plot of Deltarune is about. And you don't. You know some of the themes of it, and that's it. As in the chapter 2, Chris Knight was never a popular theory, controversial, hated, anti-Chris Knighter, respect, person who claimed some based. There's Death Knight evidence. A few people are intentionally arguing the theory in bad faith because of annoying supporters. Arguably funny, Death Knight, and I more sort of vibe-based arguments. Ambiguous, can't be debunked. Like it's 100% Death Knight or you're moron, or Death can never be the Knight, and if you think so, you're... Yeah, that's definitely true. It's more annoying than the counter evidence is the same few disputable points over can't be in the past, blah, 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 blah. Game says she's lost. Lost can have multiple meanings. But no, not... Yeah, lost can have multiple meanings, but not literally... Well, no, Des... No, like, Noelle is literally looking for Des. When Spamton uses the words find her, that is in referral to literal location. So, why would we use the same language to refer to something completely different? And again, why does Chris want Noelle to find the Knight? If it would mess with the plans. I didn't get to see this. Noelle code believer, so we don't know Death code argument. I completely agree that Death Knight isn't obvious. I disagree that Death Knight being lost can't be evidence against Death Knight because you're literally told to find her. Website literally gives you an error message which indicates that Noelle tried to find Death on the internet to fail. Find her, typing blah blah blah. Oh yeah, and the one where Chris was literally looking for something. Can't find it. Allegory, blah blah blah. Spam to Q&A. Yep. Not to mention Death being mentally lost does not match with how the Roaring Knight behaves. Smug Orpharms laughs at Susie. Soon's tractor beam pretend to kidnap Toriel in order to stall the fun gain enough for... That's an interesting one I've never heard before. I'm pretty sure they were... That actually... Yeah, that is a good point. Why Well, no. Well, I mean, it can be, but there is also the very strong implication that for some reason Torio waking up in the Dark World will have catastrophic consequences for everyone. So them using the really bad tractor beam is just trying not to wake her up. But that is interesting that it's possible they were just pretending and they really were looking for Undyne. Heck, maybe that's even who Tenna was referring. No. Maybe it's possible they were just waiting for Undyne the whole time, and the knight was there the whole time. But I don't know. This connection to Caribbean, sometimes distract you. Even the TV Dark World has nightmarish features like Sword Root. Make no sense if Des was brainwashed and mentally lost. Well, wait, what are you talking about? Chris made that fountain. Some are intelligent. I mean, the most important one is the fact that the knight communicates with Chris when you stall the fight too long. We claim Des is fully aware of what she's doing, and when it makes sense, if Des is the lost girl, so it's being the lost girl is valid reason against Death Knight. Movements aren't really that different as it's running on vibes most of the time. Sort of looked like a bat. The weapon was never a bat. Knight turns into baseball. Chapter 2, which looks nothing like the knight's form. Yin Yang. Stars in a room. Antlers. Yeah, okay. First time in ages, someone has acknowledged that unused text might not be happening in present time. Personally, I've always thought it's a flashback showing how Des got friend request accepted. I can't believe that. I've never realized that. She keeps hearing scratching noises. Friend is cat. Yep, I definitely agree with that. I hate the whole, oh, well, the scratching noise is the players scratching through the code. I mean, it can be both. It can be symbolically that, but I don't think that's literally what she's hearing. I think someone is watching her in the darkness. Yep. I mean, she already got gotten, but something worse is going to happen. Updated in real time. Tells me they're live. It very much isn't in real time. Reading it shows there's large gaps in the plot. I mean, Night is either its own character. We don't know. Forgotten member. Yeah, that I gotta agree with, but I'm not giving you a heart because you're a loser. Well, I do think there are other candidates for Knight, and I don't think everyone's stupid for believing them. Parts is not candidate. Everyone who believes that needs to remember that Deltarune was not originally going to feature Undertale characters. What the heck are you talking about? You just made that up. That was a specifically goal Toby advertised would happen if his Kickstarter for Undertale got funded. Wait, are they not making that up? I'm pretty sure that's not true. With the exception of a few fan service moments, we shouldn't expect any character more important. See, you just disproved your own argument. When did he ever say that? Please tell me. Official Japanese interview between Toby and someone on Kickstarter. Oh, if it's Google translated, you can't take this with 100% certainty. If you can complete Undertale, the next game I make will be a mix of Undertale and that dream idea. Yeah, technically that... Okay, so you just disproved yourself. What the heck? How do you get... There aren't going to be Undertale characters in Deltarune. He's saying it's a mix of Undertale and the dream idea. But if the characters were originally from Deltarune and then got put in Undertale, then that doesn't refer to that. Obviously, there are parts in Deltarune that are only there because of Undertale references. I don't know what to freak. Because Chris has no reason to think we know who the knight is. Okay. You just can't show us who the knight. We're working with the knight. Storm Shelter. Well, yeah, but why does it have a code panel on it? With, like... That kind of defeats the point of a storm shelter if only a few people can get in it, right? Or am I just stupid and don't know anything about storm shelters? But there absolutely are people who said that it's never been a mystery. People say that Death Knight isn't a mystery, and the real mystery is how she became the knight. The sentiment makes my head spin. I have a good theory on rooting the knight. Yeah. Death Knight believer, might have proof for it, but it brings an interesting narrative. The game. That being said, Rudy and the Knight would be really funny. Personally, I don't think Death's Night, because it's the night with her death. You can't really square her actions. I don't see how that changes anything. Critical failure of Death's Night is the motivation. Looking for December as a primary subplot happening beneath the surface. Even talking the forefront in places like Spampton Sweepstakes. If December was literally right there being the night, then the whole subplot goes out the window. If she's a shambling zombie and only half there, then why is it Aura farming and coordinating with Chris and Carol? It doesn't add up. Instead, it lines up significantly more for the knight to be someone who cares about deaths like Azrael. Yeah. Possibility on three senses, it could be a mystery. I need to look at what that is because I have no idea what they're talking about. Oh wait, never mind. That spells it out. Comic relief. I should not have this running. This is so long. Alright, why does it keep doing that? Point. Yeah, but just because it's for comic relief doesn't mean it didn't happen. It still very much is an event that happened in the canon of Deltarune. And it doesn't suddenly... And it proves that that is something that can continuously happen, and the characters can just do that. Comparing the missing character you're looking for turned into an antagonist. That is a good point. But Azrael could also be missing, so it doesn't fully change. What the hell? After yup, and then immediately retract that statement. What the hell happen? Oh, the freaking skirt. He's not in the know, guys. They're not in the know. And you lost me. Plot requires basic laws of physics to work. It's not as obvious as to forget it's not. If you know anything about Des, you know enough. Well, I mean, I guess technically the bat only appears in a single line of dialogue. Does it? No, it also appears on the Spampton Sweepstakes, doesn't it? Or does it just say Des hitted them? No, it freaking doesn't. It's fucking Undertale Deltarune. Chris pick up Susie by feet to eat food off floor. One thing I find really confusing about theorizing is why some people can't accept the obvious answers. Entire videos about how it might not be desperately thinking who could it be? If you aren't a good writer, it's an excuse for theories that are divisive purely for the reason of being divisive. But they've never been that. They've never been. No one is making these theories to be annoying, to just disagree with people. We can very clearly see from all the comments we've looked at, there are people who really love Rudy Knight and others candidates and are being browbeat by other fans to not even discuss their theories that they feel passionate about. And why are you asking this question when I just gave you like 4 other answers of what it could be? Not exactly sure you're drawing the conclusion that theories explaining how Des is the Night exist solely because the theory that Des is the Night on its own can't stand on its own. It exists because Des is the Night as a theory can't exist. That they exist because Des is the Night can't stand on its own. That logic doesn't follow at all. Anyone can theorize that Des is the Night. There's a amount of evidence pointing that way. Theorizing about how she's the Night is not a necessary function after the premise that she's a Night at all. I could theorize she's the Night based on what evidence alone and wait for the game to explain how she became the Night. Well, that's not the problem. The problem is people act like it's a fact that this happened, but our only evidence for it... No, there's no evidence for it. We just made up stuff to fill in the gaps of where it couldn't work. It's okay if that's your theory. When you're treating it like a fact, you need hard proof. Firmly believe Noel is Lucas and Chris is Klaus. How many people don't understand this? Theories in essence are useless because they're only working with 7 chapters worth of available information. You aren't to know the answers. Things like Chris's hand friend and blah 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 blah. Imagine how boring the rest of the game will be. Theories like that completely miss the appeal of the game. Exactly. This night only people are so lame. The way they're treating the rest of folks or even discussing the idea of there's just the superiority complex. This night was exactly the same. I'm gonna be real. I used to like this night as a theory, but now I want it to be literally anyone else. Yeah. Story can only be good if it goes the way I imagine it. Why would... Well, wait, I'll make the next video and I'll tell you why. Well, I already did give you a brief rundown, but just not that deep. So, I think Forever is really stupid as Rudy Knight because it's a thematically inferior version of Death's Night. instead of subverting the princess in the castle by having her be the villain because no one saved her, it's a person who seems chill enough to not want to end the war, or especially with Carol and Noel, but the subversion of just the person who you thought will die is bad guy, probably be like evil Rousey levels of personality rewrites. Remember, if Chapter 4, Gerson and Susie discussing the night is, be it Susie give the idea that it has to be someone who wants the world to burn, well again it isn't reliable to emphasize that the night. No, Susie is just acting off what she knows. That does not prove anything. Yes, from her perspective, it looks like the knight is just a horrible, evil person. It's the impossible being a part of the conspiracy, maybe with extra bit. But no one ever said the knight is the big bad. The knight is the antagonist, the main antagonist, the one you're going to chase through the majority of the game. But for all we know, that might not even be true. I might still be right, where it's like chapter 3, 4, and 5 are the chapters of the night, and then beyond that is other stuff. It's not... It doesn't make him evil, it doesn't make him the villain. Starting to be more independent. For a reason why the knight is antlers, death, someone impersonating death, someone wearing antlers in remembrance of death. The knight has antlers, but isn't death. Pretty much. Or it's just symbolic. You know, let's see what we got. Yeah, this is coherent. I definitely agree that that's possible. I'm going to say because it's death, because it traumatized. Mixed thoughts, but right now, 50% Rudy, 200% Azrael, 200% Des, 10% someone else. Confident that it's not Carol, she's the mastermind doing the dirty work. Asgore, too large. Papyrus, no way. He's taking the game too seriously for that. Again, Papyrus, just because he's a funny guy doesn't mean he's a joke character. No clue why this is an argument. We saw no seriousness with video. When people try to shut down discussion just to push Death Knight, this isn't friend inside me levels of brain rot. It's a genuine mystery. Just personally a fan of Death Knight, despite most of the above. It's probably a holiday. I refuse to call concrete. Blah, 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 night here. What? Call any of the few concrete things we know about the Red Knight a herring. Red herring. If I'm wrong, who cares? 3 candidates. Rudy just seems boring compared to Des and Carol. Carol Knight could totally be the case. I think it's just. I think the Chapter 2 Dark World feels like Des personally designing a world just for Noel and feels cooler than a smorgasbord of other evidence. I'm ready for this video to... Oh, thank goodness we're almost at the end. I don't understand why every other character motifs is being plastered and everything related to them would be a rule that only Des is immune to. What? I mean, listen to the background music. It's clearly the Lost Girl motif. I never argued I argued the exact opposite. I argued that the only way the night, like, unless it's purely prophecy, religious stuff, obviously the knight is looking for Des. So her having the motif, or the knight having her motif, doesn't, like, yeah, they're related, but they're not. That doesn't make the knight Des. I didn't think the knight's identity is supposed to be a mystery. The real mystery is what happened. First encountered 10 seconds of the intro. You can see them bent over. With a hole in their head. The hole in their... No? Why would someone look like a Titan spawn have a hole in their head? Implies, like, in the sword root, someone in a dark world stabbed someone, turning them into the night. What? How does the sword root imply that? It doesn't imply... Or, I mean, like, it implies Chris attacked someone. But it does not imply they created a dark world in their body because the thing is, it would have to be intentional. The whole deal with creating a dark world is you have to concentrate on it. It has to be your will. Chris couldn't accidentally spawn a fountain in Des's body because they cut them. You would have to deliberately do that, so it can't just accidentally happen. Oops. If you want to get tonight, not a single person reacts differently. It's incredibly strange. If the soul and Susie almost won, then the knight is in danger, especially if Chris is the one who swoons them if you win. Old man showing up and being dead mixed with Rudy's illness. Setting up for Noah for character growth, to let someone go, to let her dad go, to let Des go. Again, assuming where the story's going, it could not be that. Toriel, for some unknown reason, is hostile to Carol. She is to Asgore. The only reason is because Carol's working with Asgore. It seems like Toriel, for some unknown reason, wants to keep things buried, like in Undertale, run away. And so much setting up with Noel, Des, but most importantly, the Des interaction in Chapter 4 at the end of the church, where Chris doesn't open the closet door. It doesn't matter if it's Des or not. It doesn't matter what happened. Huh? It also matters why the depiction the three Roaring Titans is disturbingly close to matching Toriel, Asgore, and Carol. No, it's not. That's just not true. It's close-ish to Asgore. I guess you could argue Carol. Toriel, not even close. As if Rudy's death is what causes the roaring or fight between the adults. The Knight's identity is a distraction. No, the freak it's not. Because again, like that requires way more assumptions about where the story is going, other than to just say it's a mystery, we're supposed to solve it. No, wait, but this is gonna be the worst take I've seen on this. It's either holidays or Azrael. He lost me when he started. Prime motivation for Rudy keeping himself alive for some reason. I didn't say it was the prime one. I said it was. I just discussed it because it was different. It's normal to assume a person would like to live as long as possible and is suffering from some kind of terminal illness, which drives to do desperate stuff to keep themselves alive. We clearly see that even when he's in condition, he prioritizes family, going on service just to be there. So if it turns out that he's lying, two-faced villain type of guy, going to church would be contradictory. I think Rudy Knight might have a much deeper and more interesting motivation than that involving Des Noel, but you chose the worst motivation to justify that. I don't even want to talk about the stuff you brought up with the Halloween Mother Act and the other just Pyre stuff, stupid. Sorry if I misunderstood anything from a video because I didn't sleep and maybe I'm just being biased there, but I can add my thoughts on when I get some rest. Great job. True. Generational video. Thank you. I've been mentioned quite a few times, most notably Chris Call. Oh right, I'm stupid. On that IC signing. Oh yeah, I did. Man, I'm stupid. No, I was terrified because she thinks the zombie pizza box evidence the idea that zombies exist, or at very least exists, and there is this concept. Yep, I'm just dumb. Cat. A lot of room to discuss who the Knight is, because we have no clue how it works or what it is. A lot of explanations can be satisfying. With the unused code, I really don't see that being anyone but Des. For that to be the case, we'd have to have another character that was implied to have fallen into the code, darkness, whatever. And right now, they're the only one we've seen where there's Gast, or maybe the Forgotten Man, if you want to make that stretch. Personally, I'd say the unused code is pretty definitely either one of those characters based on the way they talk. It just feels like not one of... No, that makes more sense. It feels like it would be really out of left field to have unused be someone else when the story and characters related to the White World are pretty well set up. I don't know what the point, what the takeaway is here. He is... Oh wait, that's from the other video. Snail or Slug. Which, oh yeah, this isn't supposed to be exclusively about the Death Knight video. This is just supposed to be me reading comments, so I might as well talk about it. Probably did not, because I think it would be cool and it could explain why the suit works the way it does, but probably not because slugs don't have... Or, never mind, actually, because we already talked about the possibility that the second pair of eyes could be holes for something else, not more eyes, so never mind. But snails and slugs have all been like godlike beings and stuff, or like the void, so it will be interesting. If Papyrus isn't the Knight, why is Toby torturing us with his absence? Thank you, Joe Biden. Soda Mantle. I say I hope we're wrong, and the Knight's basically Deltarune something but more supernatural. Sure. You are the dismissive mock of the canons, actively calling people annoying, trying to debunk theories, be serious, and use logic by using real world logic. It's stupid, but Papyrus using flying as a joke. Because it's something that happens in the game versus something that doesn't happen in the game. You're comparing me using actual proof in the game versus I'm just gonna talk about what would make sense in the real world, because Deltarune totally is going to operate on what makes sense in the real world. And also, no, it's not just that people are being annoying trying to debunk things, it's the fact that they're actively being hateful and rude and harassing others over their opinions. It's not just about trying to prove it wrong, It's the fact that people are saying stuff like, Papyrus Knight is objectively stupid, and you're also objectively stupid if you like it. I don't see anything other than this being true. Don't think people are stupid for believing other options. I've looked at the evidence, and I can't bring myself to think anything else is true. Exactly. Many others, I'm pretty convinced that Death's something using her form. Like, it makes a lot of sense. Death's the bad girl, the adventure creative type. Dives in too deep or pushes too far, gets lost, consumed, or taken over by darkness. For I'm not at all against other people having their own theories. Yeah. It'd be funny if the night wasn't. No, it wouldn't. Clearly remember that. Oh no, we're not even close to the bottom. It just keeps extending. Oh my gosh. How much more? Oh my gosh. I don't know if I can do all this. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my. Oh, okay. What was the very first? No. I want to accept Papyrus with Caddy as the night dog. Oh no, we have an argument or something right here. Ignoring a lot of reasons why he can't be the knight. Why is he attacking us? Why is he summoning a titan? How is his body just like that in the Dark World? How is he transforming as the knight into various different things? Why would he have friend laugh? Why does the knight have antlers? You get it? He's naive. You can't just imagine him agreeing to us. He has morals. Blah. It's like if Flower just convinced him to hurt people. No, I already. This doesn't make him mean he can't be the knight. Again, you're basing this on the idea that he has to be like his Undertale counterpart, and he doesn't. I think he will be mostly like it, but it doesn't have to be. This freaking guy just. Oh, that's not the same guy. What about Noel Knight? You can do that on your own. Realistically, there's only 3. Okay, let's just skip over anything that says it would be bad writing if possible to objectively narrow down the knight. Appearance is subjective. Doesn't look like anything. Antlers, helmet, actions. Don't know. Chris could have been first founds. Boo. Carol beaten Chris and Susan to the church because the fountain could have been made in advance. Narratively. Yeah, that's another thing. The whole Carol moving through the trees has even more credence because Asgore was also just in the trees for no apparent reason. So the idea of characters hiding and moving in the trees is already established. Carol, Azrael, Asgore, Rudy, Knife Knight, Chris's knife, December, Gaster, Vessel. Okay. Here, okay. Bruh. This is. I am not your hero, bro. This Night Truther, not against Night Beast. Carol's case, hilarious implications, and that Rudy case would be complete. What is with this character assassination? You don't even know what that means, do you? What does that mean? I don't know. Oh, I mean, we can figure it out. Best candidate. I'm just gonna look it up for you. Let's just see what the freak this meat. Where'd it go? Yep, I am also going to beat Sans to death. Alright, I'd love to see all of them, but oh my gosh. I can't. Look at how long this is. I'm almost 2 hours in. I'm just going to end it right here abruptly. I don't